everybody. This is Jen. I think you hopefully still all remember me from the office, although I'm not in the office currently. I'm working from home. But I'm part of from the pastor's desk, just sharing some news items with you today. So we're wanting to start a feeding project where we will require some glass jars, and that's where you come in to the picture. We are needing you to donate some clean glass jars, please, ones that are already ready to be used. And things like the coffee, the glass coffee jars, the larger mayonnaise containers, the glass. It's also hygienic and it can take boiling water. So that's the reason for glass. And we will be putting 2-minute noodles and soup in those jars where we can add water and it's an instant meal, or they can take it home. So thank you very much for that. We appreciate your donation. Can be dropped off at the church. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the next installment of From the Pastor's Desk. Before we continue, Jen, thank you so much for doing the news intro for us and all that you do for us here at the church. So, as you know, From the Pastor's Desk is a time where we get together on a Friday just to see what's happening in the church, but then also to dive into some scripture. And so we've recently just started going through the book of 1 Thessalonians. And I don't know how you feel, but for me, it has just been a really, really good time just to dive into the scriptures together corporately. And so thank you so much for those that follow along, and for those that pass these messages on as well. Again, thank you so much. So this morning, as we continue our journey in 1 Thessalonians, we know that we're on chapter 2, and we come to verses 7 and 8. And the reason I say verses 7 and 8, because when I was reading this last week and just preparing for our time this morning, these two verses really just jumped out at me. And it's quite strange that, when we look at it, that we can kind of get to the point where two verses really jumped out. And so for me, it's been a really, really an amazing time just to, over this last week, just dig into these two verses. And hopefully for you this morning is going to be the same thing. So without any further ado, let's open up this morning and read 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 7 and 8. As apostles of Christ, we certainly had a right to make some demands of you, but instead we were like children among you, or we were like a mother feeding and caring for her own children. We loved you so much that we shared with you not only God's good news, but our own lives too. And so we get to this point, we know that Paul is writing to the church in Thessalonica, and he's writing what happened there, and he's almost like reminding them. And so we see this thing where Paul's telling them about the conduct that three men, Paul himself, Timothy, and Silas, all had while they were in Thessalonica. And so when we look at that, we immediately get to this point going, it's a bit weird because we see some very strange images being brought across. The images of a child. We were like children, or had every right to be like children. And so I even just started thinking about that this morning. And so Paul's saying we had every right to ask you to look after us. And so when we think that is the very nature of children, that they have every right, there's this expectation, there's this obligation for us as adults, for older people, to look after children, to protect children, to guide them and care for them. But instead, they used a very strange illustration of, but we were like a mother looking after children. And so I started thinking about that, how we see how Paul uses this very strange example of a family unit. And we look at, yes, they could have been children, but actually, no, they were like a mother looking after the other kids. And so I started even just thinking about that and thinking, but why a mother? Here Paul's writing in a context that is very male driven, very masculine. We see when we look at the when we read scripture, if we're reading from one of the older translations, if I can put it like that, we see that it always refers to dear brothers. It's only the newer translations that beget gender inclusive, dear brothers and sisters. And so we look at everything was very masculine focused in the time. Um, and we know at the time that women weren't considered in the same regard as men were. Children weren't considered in the same regard. But here, Paul very specifically goes against the culture at the time and says, we were like a mother. And I started thinking about that because I don't know how many people feel about this, but for me, when I look at the roles of a mother and the roles of a father, there's two very distinct roles that each one has. A mom is there to nurture, to care, to love, just to kind of embrace and just be there for them. Where a father, yes, does nurture, does care, but a father also protects. But even when we think about that, protection, moms protect us. That when there's that old saying that never mess with a mom and her cubs because the mom will take you out. But I started thinking about that here he's saying that like a mother, we nurtured, we cared, we guarded, we made sure that you grew up. That when you fell down, we picked you up, dusted you off, and dried up your tears and sent you along your way. And so now you may be wondering where this is going this morning, but when we start thinking about that, here we're seeing Paul and them saying, yes, we shared the gospel with you, and that you'll know that for us as a church, we are on this mission to continue and to strive to be Christ focused, gospel centered. That everything we do focus on Christ, but everything else is centered on the gospel. And here Paul is saying, yes, we shared the gospel with you. But he also says to them, we did something so much more than just sharing the gospel with you. We did life with you. And so you'll know if you've been at the church or if you've been following the series for any time from the pastor's desk, you'll know that we've spoken in the past before about something we do called the Titus Project. And again, it's something that we see based in Scripture. But more than that, we see Paul has this thing where Paul would often mentor younger people in the faith and encourage them, lead them, guide them, and equip them. And so Paul was doing life with those people. And so I started thinking about that when we think about this, that the greatest gift that we get in terms of our Christian perspective, so when we put on a Christian lens, our faith perspective, the greatest gift that we get is the gift of the gospel. Because we know the gospel is life transformative. The gospel is so powerful in its transformation. But the greatest gift that we can give and get in terms of a human perspective is just sharing our innermost being with somebody else or doing life with somebody. St. Francis of Assisi has been attributed to saying, at all times, share the gospel, and if necessary, use words. So there you see there's this lifestyle of sharing the gospel. There's this life of sharing the gospel. And the only way that we get to do that is when we do life with other people. And now you may be wondering why I say this and going back again to the point of being a mom. Mothers love us. Mothers care for us. Mothers want the best for us. And I started thinking about that quite a bit and realizing that yes, moms share themselves with us. That moms and dads so readily give up of themselves to help their children. And Paul, Silas, and Timothy are doing the same thing here, where they readily give up of themselves for the benefit of the church. And they do life with them, so they know what's going on in their lives for the benefit of the church. And that got me thinking, and I just want to share quickly two other verses. So the first one is from 2 Corinthians 12, verse 15. And let's just read that together quickly. 2 Corinthians 12, verse 15 says, I will gladly spend my life and all that I have for you, even though it seems the more I love you, the less you love me. Paul's obviously talking about his concerns for the church in Corinth, but Paul's saying that I will gladly give up all of my life for your benefit. And don't you see a similarity that between Paul, what he's saying there, and the love that God has for us? We all know that verse, John 3, verse 16, for God so loved the world. But I started thinking about that even more, that there's this thing about doing life with other people, where we start thinking about their benefit more than our own benefit. And I come across a verse like 1 John 3, verse 16, really, really easy to remember. And that says the following: We know what real love is because Jesus gave up his life for us. So we also ought to give up our lives for our brothers and sisters. And so there you see this family unit coming together. This family unit coming together, yes, sharing the gospel, but also doing life together. And so the challenge that I want to leave with us today, and as we go into this next week, is that firstly, are you sharing the gospel? Or are you ashamed of the gospel? Or are you sharing the gospel to the point where people can see the life transforming power in you? And secondly, are you sharing the gospel in such a way that actually you're doing life with people? You're doing life, whether it's with peers, whether it's people older than you or younger than you. Are you doing life with those around you? Or are you acting like a little island all by yourself? And so I know that's another whole concept to dig into, but you'll know that as you've gotten to know me and my thoughts and that I'm a big advocate on doing life together. I'm a big advocate of sharing the gospel in a context that's real, in a context where we just do life together. Whether it's going and watching somebody that you're mentoring playing rugby, obviously we can't do that now during lockdown. Whether it's getting involved in things that people enjoy doing, just so that you can share life with them. What impact are you making? Are you holding on to yourself, or are you giving up of yourself for the benefit of those around you? And so as you can see, just two verses, verses 7 and 8, and we see how Paul and Timothy and Silas conduct themselves. And we're so quick to say that all church leaders, all pastors, all preachers should be acting like this. But I think that it goes so much further, that we should all be living out these principles. So thank you so much for watching. Jen's got one more announcement. Have an awesome day and God bless.
Am I starting from free?
We'll leave that in.
How long is this going to take?
So we have an opportunity for you to share a newsworthy item with your Westway family. If you have something that you think we need to be made aware of and that you'd like to share with the Westway family, please email the pastor or either of the pastors, Pastor Barry or Pastor Jordan, detailing your information that you'd like to share. And this is a wonderful opportunity for prayer as well if there is a need. So please feel free to do that. Thank you so much. Take care.